Hello, I'm Robert Fuller. The title of this film, Pedophile, comes from two Greek words, meaning child and love. Now, maybe that sounds pretty innocent, because all of us like kids. But the word pedophile actually means child molester, a sick and dangerous man. Everyone from high school age up should know something about the types of people that are molesters. All of us should know something about their methods of operation. That's why this film was made. If it helps to save even one child, then its purpose will be accomplished.
Cynthia, call Jeannie and ask her to come home for me, will you?
Gee, she's not with us, Mrs. Baker.
Oh, do you know where she is?
I haven't seen her since school. I think she went to the park with Sandy Martin.
The park? Okay, thanks. If either of you see Jeannie, will you send her home, please? Dinner's almost ready.
Sure, Mrs. Baker, we will.
You're sure, Sandy? You're sure she started home right when you did? No, I'm sure everything's all right. She must have just gotten sidetracked. Bye.
Jeannie! Jeannie Baker! Jeannie! Jeannie Baker! Your mother wants you!
Jeannie! 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 You have to come home now. Dinner's getting cold. Jeannie? Is that you in there?
No significant evidence was found at the scene of the crime. Mrs. Baker had moved Jeannie to a more comfortable place and had gathered up a few of her daughter's scattered belongings before the ambulance or the police arrived. This was natural maternal behavior, but it eliminated any chance that the police could get a lead to the attacker from evidence at the scene. The Jeannie Baker case was assigned to Lieutenant Jack Lacey and Officer Bill Perkins. Lieutenant Lacey had 12 years' experience with cases of child molestation. Officer Perkins had been a detective just over a month.
She's still on the critical list.
It sure would help if we could find out if Jeannie knows who did this to her.
No chance. She was semi-comatose when they brought her in.
When will we get a chance to talk to her?
At this point, I really don't know. Could be several days before she comes out of it.
Mrs. Baker was under sedation and sleeping. Mr. Baker could add little to what was already known.
Well, there's the Coles down the street, and the Steins, and the Murphys. Their kids go to the same school as Jeannie. Then there's the Washburns, and Mr. Franco.
Oh, Mr. Franco? Who's he?
Well, he's Mrs. Washburn's father. All the kids in the neighborhood know him. He's always fixing their bikes and toys and things.
Oh, I see. And what about the stores neighborhood?
In most cases, child molesters and their victims know each other well. So, in the absence of evidence to the contrary, the experienced policeman begins his investigation with the people closest to the victim and works outward. The announced purpose of the questioning is to discover if any suspicious persons have been seen in the company of the victim or other children. But it allows the officers to evaluate these people whose characteristics or habits arouse their interest, and to do it without casting suspicion on innocent persons. After a thorough investigation, Lacey and Perkins felt that 3 people should be checked out more fully.
There's this one guy that comes here almost every afternoon. The thing is, he's obviously a homosexual.
You don't happen to know what his name is, do you?
No, I don't. He don't try anything over here, so I can't chase him out.
The practicing homosexual is usually attracted to adolescent boys and young men, but it is not uncommon for some homosexuals to seek out pre-adolescent boys or girls. Homosexual molesters are interested in young pre-pubertal children, preferably but not necessarily male. Frequently, the homosexual molester has himself been the victim of a molester when he was a child. Other homosexuals turn to the very young because children this age haven't yet developed the secondary sex characteristics which they find distasteful. Young children have no pubic hair, no breasts. Their voices are still high and their bodies still soft. Since they're young and inexperienced, they can't dominate the molester, demand things of him, or even make unflattering comparisons. The homosexual adult can feel safe with them, even superior to them. This feeling of being able to be somebody is what leads many homosexuals to prefer children of either sex to adults. This possibility led Lacey and Perkins to talk to the man the park supervisor pointed out to them. But they discovered that whatever else he was, this man's orientation was definitely toward adults. Mr. Franco was the neighborhood Mr. Fix-It. In fact, helping kids seemed to be Mr. Franco's main pleasure in life. This was what aroused the officer's interest. Although the average age of the child molester is only 38, still there are plenty of incidents involving older men, and there are many reasons why an older man might turn to children for sexual gratification. Often he's lonely, a widower perhaps. He's retired from his job, and his children are grown and have lives of their own. He feels there's nothing of any real importance for him to do, and that nobody cares about it. At first, he might turn to children mainly for the attention and affection he doesn't or can't get from adults. This by itself, of course, doesn't make an old man a molester. Other factors are necessary. Aging itself, disease, alcohol, can all contribute to an older person's mental deterioration. His judgment weakens, and social customs, including sexual taboos, become blurred. Then a senile man can enter his second childhood. He literally begins to think of himself as a child again. So to him, it's logical to seek out other children for companionship and for sexual gratification. The senile molester can even be the neighborhood Mr. Fix-It, the man who keeps all the children's toys repaired.
Looks like the kids keep you pretty busy, Mr. Franco.
Yeah, they do, but I get a kick out of it. Gives me something to do. By the way, how's little Jeannie coming along?
Well, she's still in the hospital, but the doctors say she's making progress.
That's great. What a horrible thing to have happen to her. Have you found the man that did it?
We're still investigating, Mr. Franco, and we thought you might be able to help us.
Well, I'd like to, but what can I do?
Well, have you seen anyone in the neighborhood that might have aroused your suspicions?
Or maybe some of the kids may have mentioned something.
Well, nothing comes to mind offhand, but let me think.
It soon became obvious to Lacey and Perkins that although John Franco was showing a few signs of advancing age, he was just what he appeared to be, a nice older man. Willie Stokes' intelligence level was that of a middle-grade moron, yet he was able to do a creditable job of cleaning up around the station. Unfortunately, mentally defective people are one of the most common types of child molesters. Since Jeannie Baker always walked past the station on her way to and from school, the officers wanted to find out more about Willie. But most mentally defective people who are not in an institution manage to live within society's accepted limits. Many even lead relatively productive lives. Lacey and Perkins soon learned that Willie Stokes was one of these. As first one day passed and then another, pressure on the police mounted. As Lacey well knew, no other crime so quickly unites a neighborhood in anger and fear as child molestation does.
You've been telling us what you're doing to protect us from whoever did this. But isn't there anything that we can do to help protect ourselves? I mean, you can't be everywhere.
No, ma'am, we can't. The most important thing that you can do is teach your children some basic rules. Not to enter a stranger's home or garage, to keep away from strangers in automobiles, especially if they ask directions or offer a ride, to get the license number, the description of the car and the driver, if an offense is attempted. Not to leave the school, the playground, or the movies with a stranger. Not to accept candy, cookies, money, or other gifts from strangers, and not to allow them to touch their clothing. These are some of the most important rules. I'm sure that you've told your children this before, but it's advisable to go over with them once in a while.
Excuse me, Mr. Novak. Telephone, Lieutenant.
Thanks. Excuse me.
That's right, Lieutenant. She's definitely out of danger. The doctor says we could talk to her tomorrow morning.
Yes, it was on.
Right. I'll set it up with her parents. Right.
Okay,
So long.
Now, the most important thing you can tell us, Jeannie, is whether you know the man who hurt you.
No.
Did you ever see him before?
No.
Okay, Jeannie, why don't you just tell us what happened right from the beginning?
Go on, Jeannie.
Well,
Lady, you haven't seen a little dog around here, have you?
no, what kind of dog?
A little black Cocker Spaniel. He's just a puppy.
No, why? Did you lose him?
He slipped his leash while I was taking him for a walk. Say, maybe if you help me, we could find him.
I can't. I'm late for dinner already.
Wait a minute. See, the dog belongs to my little daughter. She's only 7 and she's very sick in bed. The dog's her only playmate. If I lose him, she'll just be heartbroken.
Well,
Couldn't you help me for just 10 minutes? I know your mom and dad would be very pleased if you could help me find him.
well, okay, just for 10 minutes though. What's his name?
Benji. His name's Benji.
Jeannie told the officers that when they didn't see the dog on the lawns, they began looking in the shrubbery. After a few minutes, the man suggested they sit down to rest. He began telling Jeannie how nice she was to help him and what a pretty little girl she was. Then he put his arms around her and kissed her because she was so sweet. After that, he kept touching her and kissing her. Jeannie knew something was wrong and tried to leave, but instead of stopping, the man pulled her down and began touching her, down there. She screamed and tried to break away. That's when he started hitting her.
You know, in a way, that girl was lucky.
Lucky? Are you crazy?
Well, not as lucky as most kids, but it sure could have been a lot worse.
What do you mean?
Physically, she'll heal up pretty fast, but most molested kids don't get hurt the way she did. Usually, it's a few remarks, a pat on the fanny, a kiss, maybe some fondling.
But don't you see what that does to their minds?
Sure I do. I've seen kids that have really been hurt, both their minds and their bodies. You name it. I've seen torn rectums, torn vaginas.
Boy, it must make you want to kill the guys that do that.
But that's wrong, legally and morally. You have to realize the people we're dealing with are sick. They don't have control over their emotions or they wouldn't do these things. In fact, they need help, just like their victims do.
What about the guy we're after? He must be some kind of a sadist to beat her up the way he did.
Oh, I doubt it. I think he beat her up to keep her quiet, so she couldn't attract attention and get him caught. In fact, you know, I can almost picture the guy we're after. Between 25 and 30.
A house in the suburbs, 2 kids, and a pretty wife.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, come on.
No, I mean it. Well, whether he has kids or a wife or not, he's probably just an average Joe.
And why did he do what he did?
There are lots of reasons.
What makes an apparently normal, healthy, relatively young man become a child molester? In most cases, the sexual attraction to children has always been there, in some form. The true pedophile, the person who has a deep-seated psychological compulsion to use children as sexual objects, has usually had a very active and satisfying pre-pubertal sex life. But as they get older, they find girls their own age harder and harder to handle. So they turn back to pre-adolescent girls, and there they stay for the rest of their lives. In other men, pedophilia remains hidden until certain circumstances trigger it. Psychological impotence is one common cause. Some men in their 40s, even their 30s, can't get an erection with women their own age, so they turn to pre-adolescents who don't yet know about impotence. Other men become disgusted by a woman's breasts or her abundant pubic hair, so they turn to children who haven't yet developed these characteristics. Some men, because of deformity or ugliness, or for various psychological reasons, are unable even to approach women, much less have a satisfactory sexual relationship with them. So they turn to children who are less demanding and less critical. But whatever the causes, the pedophile is seeking the attention, affection, and sexual gratification which he cannot find in adult society.
How does that look, Jeannie?
Like him. Except just a little bit fatter.
Okay, fine. Why don't you look through this book and see if you can come up with his car?
There, that looks like it.
That's the car right there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You found anything on that dog gimmick yet?
No, but I'll bet that I found just about every other MO that you can think of.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Most molesters seem to be natural child psychologists. Some of them even study the subject. It's fantastic how well they relate to kids.
Are those really police calls, mister?
They sure are. Pretty neat, huh?
Yeah, I'll say.
Did you ever see a radio like that before?
You know, it's fantastic.
Well, that's nothing compared to the one I've got at home. It's a real shortwave radio, and you can hear things from all over the world on it.
No kidding?
No kidding. Say, I live real close. Would you like to come over and see it?
Hey, take it easy, all right, Elgin.
Thanks.
That's an awfully big load for such a pretty girl. I sure hope you don't spill it again.
Me too.
You live close by?
I live way over past 4th Street.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I'm going over that way myself. I'd be glad to give you a ride home.
Come on, Jerry. Everyone else is off on the level for a shave. I already told you twice. I'm broke. B-R-O-K-E. Well, okay. See ya. See ya.
Hi. Hi. You know, I couldn't help hearing what you told your buddy about being broke.
Yeah, I already spent this week's allowance.
It's only Saturday. I know what you mean. It always seems like you're broke and you need money most.
That's for sure.
Of course, I know where you can make $1, and it wouldn't take long.
Doing what?
Come here and I'll show you.
Hi, Mr. Lindsay.
Oh, hello, Margie.
See how good I can jump up, Mr. Lindsay?
Yes, that's just fine. Do you remember that candy I had last week? The kind you like so much?
Sure.
Well, I bought some more, but I think I bought too much. Why don't you come over here and I'll give you some?
Hey, son. I wonder if you can do me a favor. I've been having some trouble here with this distributor. I think I got it fixed now, but I need somebody to get in there and hit the starter. Think you can handle that?
Sure.
Okay, try it. Okay, try her again. Hey, that's great. Right over, we'll take her for a quick test run here.
Well, that does it. We've got nothing on that particular MO.
Nothing in the sex files either.
Well, at least we know how he operates, what kind of a car he drives. Now we've got a good idea of what he looks like. Let's get some flyers out.
Cindy, have you seen Mary Lou?
No?
Well, if you do, tell her her mother wants to see her.
Oh, she can't. She's helping some man look for a lost dog. Here, Benji. Here, Benji.
You know what, honey? I bet Benji's hiding those bushes over there. Let's look there.
Okay.
Hey, wait a minute, Mary Lou. Hold it, fella.
Get this out to Lieutenant Lacey right away.
Lieutenant Lacey, no wants, no warrants, a 64 Volkswagen.
John Paul Chase?
Yeah.
We're police officers, John. Now, wait a minute. We know you have a big problem. We want to help you. If you'll just let us. Now, it's my duty to inform you of your rights.
Like most child molesters, John Paul Chase was not so much a criminal as he was a very sick man. The tradition in our system of justice and our society is not to harm the sick, but to help them and to cure them if possible. But even though most molesters are not responsible for their actions, the harm they do to young children can leave lasting scars, even if those scars can't always be seen. That's why it's not enough just to know how to deal with molesters when they appear. Even more important, we must teach the children in our care how to avoid situations which give these sick people the chance to harm them.